The next talk will be by Nils Morawietz. Yes. Okay. I hope that I do. And it will be on the hardness of finding temporal connected subgraphs of any size. The floor is yours, Nils.
Thank you very much, Victor. This is joint work with Arno and Christian, and I use my first slide stolen by or from Arno about what is temporal graphs. Okay, I mean, we have seen it a lot of times already, but just to give the basic stuff we need, we have like this label representation version of temporal graphs the talk will be about, and the footprint is just what also sometimes is called the underlying graph. So just the vertex set, edge set that we have. And in such temporal graphs, we are interested in temporal paths. So for example, here in the left side, we can go from A to E by going, if we allow non-strict paths with time label 2 to C, and then with time label 4 to D, and also with time label 4 to E. This is the non-strict path where we we only want non-decreasing labels, but not necessarily strict increasing, but on the same topology path here, we can also have a strict one where we just traverse the last edge at type 5. And a graph is temporally connected if there is a temporal path between any pair of vertices. And we call such a temporal graph that is temporally connected to TC. And this example here, you can check for yourself, is in fact temporally connected. Each vertex can reach each other via temporal path. But the thing with temporal paths is they are in general not symmetrical. So if I can go from if I can go from X to Y, I cannot necessarily go from Y to X, which would be the case in an undirected static graph. But in some sense, even worse, the reachability is not necessarily transitive. So if I can go from A to D and I can go from D to Y, then I cannot necessarily go from A to Y. And the problem we are interested in our work is the following. We're interested in, well, first of all, in TC subgraphs, which are just vertex-induced subgraphs of a temporal graph. And, well, they should be TC, so temporally connected. We're interested in temporally connected subgraphs. For example, here in our favorite toy example, we can say, okay, these 5 vertices, well, topology-wise the same as here, just this small house, this time flipped upside down. And we see, okay, we have like this cycle of length 4 is temporally connected, each one can reach each other, and then we have an additional vertex that can also reach the rest. And this property is unfortunately not hereditary, so if I have a temporally connected subgraph, it doesn't mean that I can remove any vertex to still preserve its temporal connectivity. For example, here I can remove this one vertex and still stay temporally connected, but now no matter which vertex I remove, the remaining 3 vertices will not be temporally connected anymore. And in fact, this property is not even quasi-hereditary, so there's not necessarily any vertex I can remove. And the question we are interested in our work is we want to know, can we efficiently decide whether there is a given temporally connected subgraph of non-trivial size? And non-trivial means size larger than 2, so a size larger than an edge. An edge is always, by definition, temporally connected, like the endpoints of any edge. But like we wanted to say, is there anything bigger that is temporally connected? And before I go into this, first about related problems in this area. In terms of, it is usually phrased as closed temporal connected components. Here, TC subgraphs, they're essentially the same thing. So what was done there before, it's about the question, is there a TC subgraph of size exactly k? This is NP hard in all settings, and W1 hard also in all settings for this parameter k. For the non-strict case in undirected graphs, this was open. We answered that it's also W1 hard as the other cases. And but this problem is XP. So for every constant value of k, we can in polynomial time decide whether there is such a TC subgraph. Simply by enumerating all size k subsets of vertices and just asking, okay, is this set of vertices temporally connected in polynomial time? And the similar related question is there a TC subgraph of size at least k? And this is also NP hard and W1 hard for parameter k. As if you're interested in, Andrea gave a talk 2 years ago here at AATG about that. But for this problem here, no XP algorithm is known. Why? Well, we ask for size at least k. This means that if we ask for a specific, like just a lower bound for the size, doesn't mean that it is one of exactly this size or this size plus 1 or so on. So it could be arbitrarily far away from this value k. And in fact, our problem, what we ask here at the top, is essentially the second question for the smallest possible value of k for which it is not guaranteed to be polynomial time solvable. And so coming back to the question, can we do this efficiently? And since I'm the one giving the talk, the answer is no, because it's hard. And I want to roughly sketch how we could show this and how you have to think about the problem or like reductions in a way to avoid creating an instance where it is a trivial yes instance. So the idea is we want to reduce from multicolored cliques. So we have like our color classes and we want to pick one vertex per color class so that they are a clique in the original instance. And we want to achieve this as follows. We want some kind of selection mechanism. The reduction here is for directed graphs at first, which is somewhat simple, the reduction, and then lifting it to undirected cases pretty tricky. So we're in a directed case. So we want some selection mechanism that goes like from some vertex alpha to some vertex omega and selects by necessity at least one vertex of each color class. So for example here, then we have these 3 vertices selected. And the thing is, okay, we want temporal connectivity. This means that this vertex of color class 3 has to somehow reach back to the vertex of color class 1. So we need kind of a temporal path. Like I didn't show the labels of the path, but they're just consecutive from left to right. But yeah, we still need somehow a temporal path going from right to left again in some way. So this is not safe by itself. So we need some kind of additional gadget to allow vertices of the right to go to the left, but only if they are actually adjacent in the clique instance. And so if we have 2 vertices, y and x, and we want to kind of enable that y can reach x via some auxiliary vertices, what we do there is we introduce 2 vertices, an out and an in vertex, like an out vertex of y and an in vertex of x. So y can go time-wise early to this out vertex, and from this in vertex of x, we can go late back to x. And if these 2 vertices are adjacent in the clique instance, then we add early plus 1 path edge from this out to this in vertex so that we can go early to the out vertex, slightly later to the in vertex of x, and then very late to the x vertex. So we enable a path going from y to x. So this is safe to take these vertices in our solution, right? No, because the additional vertices we now created also have, again, we need to kind of be able to get the shortcuts back. We need to go back from the in vertex to the out vertex, from x to the out vertex of y, from the in vertex of x to y. And like now you can add more and more and more auxiliary vertices, but you always run into the same problem that you create new pairs of vertices. You have to be able to reach each other. So what we did there is we kind of put all these auxiliary vertices between omega and alpha. And the idea is all these auxiliary vertices can very early go to alpha, and at a very late time, omega can distribute to all these vertices. I'll show in a moment how this will be, like how we then get a temporally connected graph, but like this is how they are connected with each other. These gray edges are those that go like between some out vertex to some other in vertex. So from some out y to some n in x if they are adjacent. So seeing both together, we have like here our connection gadget and our selection gadget to the right, and say we have some alpha omega path. These vertices on it are S, and so this is the path to the right here. This selects us some multicolored click vertices, and what we now have is all these auxiliary vertices can go very early to alpha, follow over this path to omega. In this process, all these auxiliary vertices reach all internal vertices of this path, so the set S, are then at a late time at omega, but not at a very late time. So omega can distribute it back to all auxiliary vertices, which means that all auxiliary vertices over this path here reach all other auxiliary vertices, all vertices of S, and all vertices of S follow along the path to omega and are distributed to the auxiliary vertices. So the only thing that is left is like reachability between the vertices of S, and this is ensured by either just the directed path here or via these out-in paths over the auxiliary vertices. So this is how this reduction works in the one direction. The other direction is the more tricky part. Essentially, what we are showing in all our reductions is, first of all, every non-trivial TC subgraph has to contain both these vertices alpha and omega. And if it contains both, then it has to contain essentially such a path going from alpha to omega, meaning at least one vertex per color class, or to be precise, exactly one vertex per color class. Afterwards, if we have a vertex of some color class or from two different color classes in our TC subgraph, then they need to be adjacent in the clique instance. Meaning that if we have a non-trivial TC subgraph, then we have a clique, multicolored clique in our input instance. And okay, this is how the directed reduction works. As mentioned, it is somewhat simple or like easy to prove. The first point here being way hardest of all of them. But the thing is, this does not easily transfer to undirected graphs. For example, if we look at this gadget again, and if you would just say like, hey, make it easy, just make every edge undirected. What we then have is we have like from omega to out omega to in alpha back to omega, we have a triangle. A triangle, no matter which labels you put on them, is a clique in the footprint, meaning it is a temporally connected subgraph, no matter what the labels are. So we have to avoid triangles in some way, and we have a lot of triangles in this reduction so far. So what we did for the undirected case is we're looking for some kind of gadget that replaces this out-in vertex, like each of these auxiliary vertices, by some larger gadget such that we can attach them to S and T without creating triangles. And so we wanted to have such gadget here that itself does not contain any non-trivial TC subgraph. It needs to have like two edge disjoint spanning trees so that we can early with the red one gather all information, give it to the alpha vertex, and at a later time coming from the omega vertex distributed back to all vertices of this gadget. And we want that you have some kind of docking point here, D, that you can attach something to a docking point and alpha and omega to the S and T vertices, such that this still does not create any small non-trivial components. And yeah, finding such a gadget is kind of tricky, but we luckily found one, and it looks like this. So don't be scared. It is just two disjoint Hamiltonian paths, the one going in red from 1 to 20 with increasing labels starting by 1. And there's a blue path. Believe me, it's a path. You can here see on the bottom the order of the vertices in which this path goes back and forth. Or in a different way, you can always go, if the path goes from left to right, it goes over the red path, and otherwise it goes under it. So we have like, we go from here to here to here, and then we go one edge back to 2, and so on. And the idea is that like the red labels are strictly before the blue labels, meaning that we can distribute, we gather all information going from 1 up to 20. So we can gather this with the red path early, do something with it, and very late we can, very late meaning 21 here, we can coming from omega to 1 and distribute it all the way. But the thing is, we needed also the property that it does not contain, like these temporal, this gadget does not contain any non-trivial TC subgraphs. So it does not. I can convince you with it. At first glance, it is not easy. It's not trivial to see this. And this was like kind of the main challenge we had. We had this gadget very early on, but actually proving nicely that it has this property of not having any non-trivial TC subgraphs was kind of the main challenge for a long time. Like we could prove it by computer. We can just exhaustively enumerating all subsets of vertices and show that they are no TC subgraphs, but well, 2 to the 20 subsets, like you don't want to see that case distinction in a paper. So we looked for a very long time for a nice clean argument, and we at some point stumbled upon 2 facts. Like the first is if, like, this is the important point. This graph has a girth of 5. Like we have no cycle of lengths at most 4. We have no triangles and we have no cycles of length 4. And this makes it fairly nice to show this property. So the first property is like if our graph is temporally connected, so if we have a TC subgraph, we need a subgraph that is temporally connected. It needs at least 2n-3 edges. If the girth is at least 5, the girth is at least 5, so we need, well, at least 2n-3 edges for a subgraph of size with n vertices. And from extremal graph theory, this is very nice, it is known that if a graph has girth 5 and at least 3 vertices, then you need at least 17 vertices to have 2n-3 edges. Which means that in combination, a temporally connected graph for which the footprint has a girth of 5, a non-trivial TC subgraph on a footprint of girth at least 5 needs at least 17 vertices. So I just need to convince you that there is no subset of 17, 18, 19, or 20 vertices of this gadget that is temporally connected. And this I can do very easily by showing you that these 4 red vertices cannot reach any of these green vertices. And I also highlighted them down here in green and red. And I just need to convince you by this, because if we have this property, this means taking any red vertex excludes all green ones, and taking any green one excludes all red ones, which means that the component can have size at most 16, but by the above lemma, it needs to have size at least 17. So let's convince you that the red vertices cannot reach the green vertices. Well, the red path is completely before the blue path, meaning that within the red path, the best these red vertices can do is possibly reach vertex 16. Or the only one who can do it is vertex 17 itself. So we have like here some kind of border point between, like this is all, these 5 vertices are the only ones that can be reached by the darker red vertices, just by using edges of the red path. So I just need to now show you that none of these 5 vertices can, just by edges of the blue path, reach any of the green vertices. And for this, I also highlighted the vertex 16 here, this separation point, the largest, the earliest point they can reach in the red path. And we see them down here. All the red vertices are further to the right than all the green vertices. And in particular, there is at least one separating vertex in between. Meaning that within the red path, the best any of these vertices can do is like taking, either going to the right or taking one step to the left. But like even then, even if the 19 would go one vertex to the left, it cannot reach any of the green vertices by the blue path. Meaning, as already said at the beginning, if I take any of the 4 red vertices, I cannot take any of the green vertices. And if I take any of the green vertices, I cannot take any of the red vertices. Which in combination means the largest TC subgraph I could have in this subgraph, in this gadget here, has size 16, but since the girth is at least 5, or is exactly 5 here, it needs to have size 17, which would be a contradiction. So there cannot be any non-trivial subgraph in this gadget. So now showing that this has this property, what do we do with it? We just use it as a black box, essentially. And how we do it is we plug it in instead of the initial out and in vertex of U and V respectively. We have for each such auxiliary vertex, now one of these gadgets here. We connect it with omega at the vertex 1 of these gadgets. At vertex 20, we connect it to alpha. The docking point is it has to be carefully chosen. Vertex 8 works. And now it's just essentially the old reduction, but plugging in this gadget instead of each of the auxiliary vertices. So very early, we can go with the red path in all the auxiliary gadgets now to vertex 20 and distribute to alpha in both of them here. Then we go from alpha to omega by selecting some vertices of the multicolored clique and distribute with very late edges to the vertices 1 of all the auxiliary gadgets and continue with the blue path here through the gadgets to distribute the information to all the vertices of the these auxiliary gadgets. And intermediately to enable the connection from multicolored clique vertices, if they are adjacent, to go from U to V, we can then early go in this gadget, cross to another gadget, and leave late to the vertex we want to go to, this vertex V. This is essentially then, it is way more complicated to still discuss that there is no component that avoids alpha and omega. But as soon as you have done that, or we have done that, the rest was fairly straightforward to show that actually what you can select has to be a multicolored clique. And these reductions have a lot of implications for temporal components or TC subgraphs. First of all, the reductions show that for general graphs, general undirected and directed graphs, you cannot have a 2 to the little O of n algorithm. So essentially, you can't do better than enumerating all vertex sets and checking whether they are temporally connected. For the undirected happy case, for the undirected non-strict case, if you have non-strict reachability, you need to subdivide this edge between the in and the out vertex by another gadget here. This makes it quadratic, so you only get a 2 to the little O of square root n lower bound. The reduction also implies that if you have a given vertex in a directed or a given edge in an undirected graph, you cannot in polynomial time decide whether this is a maximal component or not. Because if you could decide it, you could decide whether there's a non-trivial component in the graph. So this is always very hard. What is also hard is approximation. So you cannot better approximate the size of the largest TC subgraph better than 1 minus epsilon times n over 2 in undirected graphs and 1 minus epsilon times n in directed graphs. And this means, these bounds are tight in the sense that in a directed graph, you can always find an n approximation. Just a single vertex is always a temporally connected subgraph. So you're guaranteed to have the size approximated in factor n. And for the undirected case, an edge is always temporally connected subgraph. So this is why we have here a division by 2. But still, if epsilon would be 0, the approximation is trivial. And what we also resolve, and I mentioned it at the beginning, is we answered this open case on whether size exactly k for undirected non-strict temporal graphs is W1 hard. Like, is there a component of size exactly k if we have non-strict reachability? This was open for the undirected graph case, and we resolved it with our reduction. Like, all of these results follow just by this reduction. And we also have some structural insights based on our reduction, or like our techniques that we use. For example, there are arbitrary large temporal graphs that are temporally connected but contain no non-trivial TC subgraphs, meaning that like they can be arbitrarily large, and if you remove any vertex, the smallest, the largest remaining TC subgraph you have is just an edge. And also what we show is that for any given girth G, there are temporally connected graphs of that girth. Meaning that like our gadget here is an example for girth 5, or like you can make it into an example for girth 5 if you order the red path from right to left. Then you can go like early, everyone can gather at 1. With a 1 of the Hamiltonian path, and then you distribute the information back to everyone with the blue path. So you can label the red path differently to make this a temporally connected graph with girth 5. And like in general, you can show that no matter which girth you want, there are always temporally connected graphs with that girth. So coming up to some open questions. First of all, like what is about the parameterized complexity of the problem? We just considered just the general case, like just introducing this basic problem, which we call non-trivial TC subgraph. And we just showed it's hard, which was way longer than we hoped for to show. But like the parameterized complexity is mostly open. For example, for parameters like tree width and other graph parameter or temporal graph parameters. Recently, it was shown that for constant tree width graphs, it is still hard to decide whether there is a component of size exactly k, or even at least k over some non-constant threshold. But like for this non-trivial case, you have to avoid triangles, and these reductions contain triangles, so it is not clear whether results from there can be transferred. So tree width is open. It would be interesting to know whether the non-strict case can be solved into better than in actually 2 to the order square root n time, or whether the lower bound can be made higher to show that even for non-strict paths 2 to the order 2 to the theta n is required. And finally, it would also be interesting to look at essentially our problem, but what if the input graph already is temporally connected and we just want to find a non-trivial TC subgraph that is not the whole vertex set? Like, you should get rid of at least one vertex and you just want to know, can you still find something of non-trivial size? Like, this might, in general, because the input graph already is temporally connected, it might give you some kind of structural insight or help to possibly make the problem easy. We don't know. Yeah, that's it for me. Thank you for your attention. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the talk. Any questions from the audience here? Okay.
Yeah, hi, Nils. I was curious about your example you constructed. So I can sort of see the intuition behind trying to start from these 2 joins of paths. Did you just do a brute force search by computer? Yeah.
Yes. Like it started the other way around. It started with this thing down here. Mm-hmm. And kind of my conjecture was it does not exist. There is no graph of girth 5 that is temporally connected. And so Arnaud made an exhaustive search with his computer that essentially gave us this graph here, but with the red path ordered from right to left. And then I was like,
Okay,
hey, by the way, what if we flip that? And then suddenly, hey, no non-trivial components.
Okay, so this comes to my next question. The exhaustive search, was it only over graphs that are obtained from two paths, or was it over all graphs? So we know that this is the unique smallest temporal TC graph of growth 5.
From the result, from this stuff here, you know you need at least 17 vertices.
Mm-hmm.
If you want two disjoint spanning trees, you need at least 18 vertices. This can also be is also in this paper about extremal graph theory. So you need at least 18 vertices to make disjoint spanning trees. And kind of in this thing here, you can essentially cut these two out. You still have girth 5 and you have still two disjoint spanning trees.
Okay.
With respect to 18 vertices, this is the smallest you can have with two disjoint spanning trees and temporally connected.
Right.
But this has no two, our graph is the smallest one that has two edge disjoint ST Hamiltonian path. In this sense, ours is smallest possible with girth 5. If they don't have to be Hamiltonian ST paths, this here is smallest possible for two disjoint spanning trees. And if they are allowed to share an edge, I don't know. I'm not sure whether you can get something with 17. We haven't checked for that.
Okay. But it's tight in at least one dimension then. It's not that this is the first thing you constructed or it's nicer to prove or anything. This is in some sense best possible for at least one of the properties that you care about.
Yeah, exactly. Since we at least care for ST paths just to make it simpler to argue later, this is smallest possible. It could be that there are some of girth 4 that are smaller, but for girth 4 you suddenly have to be more careful on how the labeling is, because if you have a cycle of length 4, they cannot be alternating in the two different trees, otherwise you're guaranteed to have
you can't have
a temporal component. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay. There is a question from someone here in the audience.
For the results on slide 4, that W1 hard and in XP, is there a better upper bound known? So this guess and check algorithm would probably put it in WP, but could you imagine that it's in W42?
Oh, good. I'm really not thinking a lot about anything that is higher than W1. I just more in terms of hardness. No, I have no real idea on how this works. Essentially, it's not true. But in the simplest case, it is at least clique. But this would only give the lower bound of W1. For the higher ones, I don't know.
Thanks.
Any other question from people here or online? Okay. I have one question. So your result is really negative.
That's true.
I'm a negative person as well, but I need to ask. Okay, can it be that difficult? What are we missing in order to design positive results, derive positive results in temporal graphs? You said tree width, and now I'm devil's advocate here, right? Is it just the underlying graph, the properties, or do we need to consider some temporal structure in the graph? So I'm not looking for an answer. It's more my thoughts, right? So, or ultimately, what do we need to do in order to bypass your negative results? What are the properties that your hardness results cannot satisfy? But
triangles.
Okay.
Yeah, Arno mentioned random graphs work pretty well, apparently. I believe so.
Okay.
Like it is very hand-tailored to exactly work the way we want. I think if you just flip some edge to another label, it could completely collapse to make a trivial component trivially existing.
Okay.
So yeah, like also temporal structure I think is very important. I talked to Laura before. She mentioned that like this interval membership with parameters should lead to FPT for this problem. So like there are temporal parameters that surely make the problem easy. And I'd like to explore this in particular for this problem, but yeah, it was too long and just was hardness already. So
Okay.
we didn't look further into it.
Thank you.